to get by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Three of the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right. We're back with another, I guess, season preview. We can call it that. It's a division preview. We did the Pacific Division last time, and now we're on to the Central Division. This was our pick, right? I'm trying to remember properly. I think it was our pick.
Yeah, this was your pick.
Okay, yeah. So, fan vote last time on Twitter was Calgary for the Pacific. Slight edge over Vegas, right, was the final results. We dodged the LA bullet, which was nice, and we picked Dallas. They just felt like, I mean, we've always had a soft spot for Dallas. I'm sure some people are surprised we didn't go with Minnesota. We almost went down that route. But we hammered Minnesota last offseason, so had to switch it up a little bit this year.
We hammered Minnesota last season.
Yeah, all year. Yeah, they were one of my favorite teams to watch last year for a good reason. A lot of good storylines there. But Dallas is a fun one. A lot of good players on their team that I enjoy. Jason Robinson's a big favorite of both of ours. Rupert Hintz had a great year as well. So they just look like a fun team going into this year. Obviously, John Klingberg was the big loss for them and big addition for the Ducks. So there's a nice little tie there that we can look into on how they're going to move on from John Klingberg. And then we've got our Duck season preview coming up probably early October. We still have two of these to get through for the East with New York for the Metro, which was another fan vote. And then your choice for the Atlantic was Buffalo, right?
Yes, it was.
Fun one. I like that one. Buffalo's intriguing this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of, we were talking about this before we started, but like there's just like a lot of weird teams. Like you could, I think other than the Atlantic, you could make a really strong case that every division is weak this year.
And maybe it's not weak, but there just feels like there's more parity in the divisions. Like there's...
So that, I think that's exactly what it is, right? I do think you're right. I don't think it is a weak thing, but I do think if you wanted to, you could make that argument just with certain teams getting older and things like that. But more than anything, I think it feels like there aren't, two or three real heavy hitters in each division. It feels like there's like two or three heavy hitters maybe in each conference. Yep. And then the rest of them below it is just kind of, we'll have to wait and see, because other than, a handful of teams, your Chicago's and Arizona's and your San Jose's, Buffalo, I think still, we'll get to them. But I think you can make a pretty strong argument for most teams finding their way into a wild card race, right? You know what I mean? I think there are certain limits on teams, just by nature. But you could make a pretty strong argument for most teams at least being in the wild card race. That wouldn't completely surprise you.
Yeah, well, we talked about some of those bottom feeder teams like Ottawa, Detroit, Seattle last year that look a lot better this year. Like, are they playoff teams? Maybe not, but they can get in that mix. Like, we've had people say, the Sens with that forward group now, they have a chance. With Cam Talbot, maybe. Detroit went crazy this season. The eyes are playing in full effect. He added a bunch of top UFAs, and Seattle had a nice quiet offseason, adding Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand, and they look like they could do better than last year. So there are a few teams, Buffalo, Chicago, Arizona, that have actively really done nothing or have sold more to get to a point where they're going to be in that Connor Bedard race. But outside of that, most of those teams that were near the bottom have done something to make themselves better, and then it feels like the top teams have just kind of fallen off a little bit. Like Colorado, this is Stanley Cup champions, but they lost Kadri and they haven't done anything to replace him. So should they be the best team in the Central? Probably, but they are worse while other teams have gotten better in that division. You've got teams in the Atlantic where teams at the top have kind of had to adjust and work with different salary cap restraints. The Leafs are the same. The Lightning are the same. Boston's roughly the same, right? So none of these teams really added and jumped themselves into number one contender. Like when we looked at the Central last year. It was like, okay, Colorado's the best team, and it's who's going to fight for second and third. And while that probably still is the case, I wouldn't be as shocked this year if I saw Colorado not finish first in the Central as I would have been last year.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost it's almost kind of interesting, right? Because I think you're right. Like, it wouldn't be surprising to see a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals and, won and had a real run at it. And, obviously they won the whole thing, but just having the deep run in general, plus the kind of year that they had this year, I don't think it's insane to be like, oh, they might not finish first. But when I ask you who else could finish first, that's a much harder question to me than Colorado could finish second, because, Minnesota's in a weird spot. They just lost Fiala. Nashville, is in a weird spot where it's like, oh, we finally got the Matt Duchene we traded for 4 years ago. And is it reasonable to expect him to be that guy again in his 31-year-old season? Like, and then, but you've got Saros, and I just think it's really interesting because, like, again, like, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but like even Winnipeg could make a run at it if Hellebuck plays well and that forward group scores enough goals. Like, I would put more money on them missing the playoffs than them finishing in the top 3 of the division. But like it could happen. There is a situation in which it all kind of goes weird for everybody. I guess you would almost have to say, outside of Colorado, the closest or the safest bet would maybe be St. Louis.
Yeah, that's what I would have said. Yeah,
fair bit of business wrapped up already. They did Kyrou and Thomas, and we'll see what happens with O'Reilly and Tarasenko. And then they've got the whole Binnington thing, which is whatever. But overall, that seems to be a really strong team.
They just feel like the one team that really hasn't lost anything.
They've been incredibly consistent, yeah.
They've kept everything together. They've done a good job fitting everything under the salary cap. They've got Tarasenko being an unrestricted free agent, but we know how a lot of these guys near the end of their career, how they do in those pending UFA seasons. Tarasenko's probably set to pop off for 40 goals, 100 points this year just to get that next contract wherever he ends up going, right? And so if any team had a shot, if I had to put money on one outside of Colorado finishing top in that division, I'd probably pick St. Louis. I can't talk myself into any other team because I can look, we're obviously going to dive into Dallas here and look at the weaknesses that probably limit me from putting Dallas there. And I think you could look at teams like Minnesota, Nashville, and Winnipeg and pick out some pretty big weaknesses on that team, on those teams that would kind of limit me from saying they could be number one. But like when you look across the board at St. Louis with that same team and how they did last year, as long as they get decent goaltending from Jordan Binnington, like everything would point to them having a pretty good year. Like they've got the depth, the defense core is probably one of the better in that division, so they should be good enough to either fight for that spot or potentially strip it from Colorado and finish first in that division.
So here's a question for you real quick. Who was the starting goalie in Minnesota? Do you know?
It's Fleury, right?
So it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I did not realize, I don't know why, I completely forgot that he signed a 2-year extension with them. I thought he was done.
Yeah, I thought it was a 1 year. I didn't realize it was
not
2.
there. Kakinen's not there. I was like, who the hell? And they have Flower and Gustafsson.
Yeah. That's a lot of faith in Marc-Andre Fleury after the year that he had.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really is one of those things. Like, I love Marc-Andre Fleury, but like, you know how I feel about Cam Talbot. I would have just rather kept Cam Talbot.
He had a better year too. Like
he had
a good year for them.
I don't think his ceiling is obviously as high as Marc-Andre Fleury is, right? We've seen Marc-Andre Fleury take stretches of 5-10 games where he just looks like a top 5 goalie in the league. I don't think his downside is as low as someone like Mike Smith, right? Where it's like, oh, you could get a Vezina winner for 3 periods tonight, or you could get an AHL backup for 3 periods tonight. Flower, I think, the floor is a little bit higher than that, but I just think Cam Talbot is such a steady presence. And like, I don't know, maybe with Flower's like personality and how like, relaxed and jovial he seems to be, it'll be good for that group in this kind of weird year to have somebody like that around. He's been everywhere, he's won. But it's just such a weird situation in Minnesota. Like No, it's weird. I don't know what the hell they're going to do this year. And again, like, they have Sam Steele now, and like,
I forgot about that one.
Matthew Boldy, and like, it's going to be interesting to see what
Rossi
they are.
should do something this year. You would expect, right? He should be.
You would
up
hope,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Maybe Addison gets a few more games.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we usually do this at the end, but we're doing it now. We might as well do our full Central recap and finish with Dallas. We usually spend about 20 minutes on this at the end, but we're already in it now. We might as well cover it. Yeah, like with Minnesota, like you said, the big thing is getting Fiala's production back. They couldn't do anything because the cap restraints they're under from what is it, Suter and Parise's buyouts, right? Is limiting them. I think it's like $8 million or maybe even more.
6 and change this year, and then 7 and change the next 2.
Yeah, so they're just handcuffed on really being able to do anything. They do have a very good team. It's just not being able. The big thing is they don't have a number one center. That's what they could have addressed this offseason to replace Fiala. Is you would expect Boldy to jump in and maybe equal what Fiala had in production last year. I hope so. And that you could, maybe they could have been in the hunt for Giroux or for one of the top centers on the market to come in and not have to have Ryan Hartman as your number one center. Now, give him credit. He did very good with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, but that could have been the place that you could do it. But now they have to rely on Marco Rossi or Hartman to be that guy this year, which is it's not an awful position to be in, but that cap space is just handcuffed them completely from taking their team to another level.
Yeah, and I mean, like the strength of this team for years has been the defense, and the defense is still really good. Spurgeon, Brodin, Dumba, Middleton's fine. Alex Goligoski had a really nice year last year. John Merrill is a perfectly fine 6'7" guy, right? Like, they've got Kalen Addison, and maybe Carson Lambos takes a jump. I doubt it. I don't know that he's going to be there yet, but Kalen Addison is 22, and he's someone you might be looking at as maybe stepping up. They got Andre Schuster, who, is on a little two-way deal, who I imagine that they'll be using to be first man up from the minors. But I think, like you said, the best bet is that Boldy plus Rossi equals something close to what Kevin Fiala brought. And, I think the other thing that's so kind of interesting to me is what having Fiala did for their ability to kind of spread their offense around, because that second line last year was Eriksson Ek, Foligno, and Greenway, which meant you kind of had Fiala on a third line, and he was incredible. And, maybe those two dudes are able to step up or we'll see. But I don't know what it's fair to expect. Like you said, Ryan Hartman was one of the best stories of last year for my money. Just to see a guy who was just kind of a career middle six grinder just pop for all these goals and really be able to fill in between two, really dynamic offensive players. It was awesome. It was so special, but I just don't know that you want to be, expecting him to do that again, or even relying on him to do that again, right? That's just not. I don't know that that's fair to him.
No, it's not, and it's a tough situation to be in. When you look at the roster right now, everything, that top six remains the same. Nothing has changed with that, and it basically has become what was, I think, Boldy, Fiala, and I forget who was centering that line last year. It's now become, Boldy has taken over, presumably, that Fiala role as being that third line option, which that's a very tough job for him to have to go and take over. He had a great run to end the year. If he had more games, he could have probably been in the Calder discussion, 39 points in 47 games. I don't know if he stays there forever. I would imagine eventually Greenway or Foligno probably comes off that second line, and maybe Boldy slots in there. But it's a tough line to break out, man. That's a tough line to play against with those three.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is with that line, I think you would almost rather drop Zuccarello down and put Boldy up with Kaprizov and I don't know, Hartman or something, or maybe you put Rossi up between those two, drop Hartman down to play with Boldy and somebody else, and now you've got a little bit more balance. I guess maybe Jost or someone like that. Maybe they can go about it that direction, but it's a weird thing because like, that matchup line, that checking line, whatever you want to call it, like that line is really, really strong. And other than Marcus Foligno, like it's built around two guys who are going to be, 25 when the season starts.
Yeah.
I mean, neither of them are going to turn 26 till the other New Year's. So, they're in a really good position with those two. I think those guys' games, work really well together. I think Eriksson Ek has more offensive upside kind of than you might think because of him being really just a strong two-way center. But it's a weird team. And again, like we were kind of talking about before, like I think one of the things we mentioned was like we could 100% see a situation where based on the couple of players that they lost, based on the long playoff run, where Colorado doesn't win this division. I don't think that means they don't like. I think it's more than fair to say that they are pretty obviously the best team in that division.
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing as winning the division. And, coming off of like a little bit of like a cup hangover or whatever, and, losing because they lost Burakovsky and they lost a couple of guys, and, maybe bringing back Josh Manson helped, bringing back Cogliano helps as far as just having like reliable depth players to fill out. But it's going to be a weird thing and to see where they're at. So, I'll ask you like kind of what I asked you before, which is like, who, if anybody, can win this division if it's not Colorado?
Yeah, I think still the answer is St. Louis. I think Minnesota, for me, maybe is in that next bracket, and for me it hinges on Marco Rossi in the year he has. Because if things go really well, and you can slot him in the Ryan Hartman spot with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, and you're able to move Ryan Hartman down to play with, shout out to Frederick Goodrow having 44 points last year. That was out of nowhere. And if you could play a third line of Goodrow, Boldy, Hartman, and then you've got that second line attack, like that's some of the best depth in the division in terms of just scoring depth throughout the lineup and guys who have the potential to put up 40 points across three different lines. We're going to talk about Dallas maybe not having that across three lines. We're talking about Colorado not having that. So I would put them in that discussion of potentially being that team, but a lot of it hinges on Marco Rossi and can he break out. But yeah, if I have to pick now, it's St. Louis. They have that depth, those three lines. When you look at top line of Sad, O'Reilly, Kiru, second line Buchnevich, Thomas, Tarasenko, and then Barbashev, Braden Shen, and whoever you want to put there. Right, they've got Cap Friendly's got a list is Clem Costin, but they have a bunch of different options of who they could put there. And that defense core, we talk about Minnesota's defense core being good. St. Louis is right up there with Scandella, Parayko, Krug, Falk, Leddy, Bortuzzo. And then their hopes, though, hinge on, again, similar to Minnesota with Fleury, on Jordan Binnington being able to get back to the form that won St. Louis to Stanley Cup. Because it was all Ville Husso last year. And Jordan Binnington had a tough year, but if anybody could bounce back, he's still 29. There's a good chance he could get back to that. The team just needs to play the same way they did in front of him when they made that run and won a Stanley Cup. So, and this is roughly still the same team that had gotten that done. So if anybody has the chance to move Colorado off that top spot, it still would be St. Louis for me. I'd be hard pressed to pick anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you ask me right now, who for sure makes the playoffs in the Central, who are those top three, I would say it's probably, Colorado, St. Louis, and Minnesota. But like, I don't necessarily feel 100% great about counting out UC Saros. Like, yeah. He's a really good goalie, and I think that team is solid. Like, I'm still not sure why they haven't replaced their head coach. I don't know what they're waiting for. I'm not, the biggest John Hines fan, but like it could be worse. And they've got a lot of, established guys who like know what they are. They know how to play. Like, you know what I mean? Like they just added, Niederreiter and like, you know what I mean? Like there's an argument to be made that they should be in that kind of 2-3 race with St. Louis.
Well, if anybody,
You know.
they have the most confidence, I guess you could say, in their netminders. Like if I had to pick the best goaltender in this division, it's probably UC Saros, maybe Connor Hellebuck. You could put in that discussion as well, right? But
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny, right? I think you would say that the three best goalies are on the 4, 5, and 6 teams.
yeah,
When you're looking at it being Ottinger, Hellebuck, and Saros. You know, I don't. Let me double check. I'm not losing my mind.
no,
but like,
well,
I'm not.
you could have said
Nobody
Kemper
in
maybe
Chicago
last
or Arizona.
year, but that's the thing with Colorado. I think that's why we're talking about them falling off is those three big losses and nothing really to replace it. You lose Kemper, and now you have Georgiev and Francouz for this year. I don't have a ton of confidence in that being successful. The defense is the exact same, so you didn't lose anything there. But you lose Kadri and Burakovsky, and your replacements are Evan Rodriguez and hopefully Alex Newhook taking a step forward and taking over Kadri's role, which again, it's the same boat as Marco Rossi being able to, have a breakout season and jump in and be a top 6 player for Minnesota. So Colorado has all these issues as well. I mean, they've gotten it done. They've won a Stanley Cup. It was going to be hard for them to keep those guys as unrestricted free agents. I mean, they had to win last year. When you look at the way their team dismantled this year, it was never going to be possible to bring all these guys back, and now we're talking about a Nathan McKinnon extension that's definitely going to be in the double digits, somewhere between $10 and $12 million. So they got it done. They had to win, but it's going to be very hard for them to pull off at Tampa Bay and repeat because that depth is kind of evaporated for them. When you're looking at right now, Evan Rodriguez is maybe your second-line center, and I like Evan Rodriguez, but one good season is tough to say, okay, can he do that and be a top 6 player in Colorado between Arturi Lehkonen and Valeri Nichushkin or Gabriel Landeskog? Like, can he be that guy? Can he be what Kadri was last year?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not even really sure that you are best suited by playing Rodriguez at center. Like, I'm not sure that's the best way to use him. I think using him as a complementary winger is probably best. Maybe you go Lehkonen, I don't know, Comfer and Nichushkin. But like, now your third line is Newhook and Rodriguez and someone. I mean, it's not going to be Darren Helm. Maybe it's Cogliano.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody comes up, but like, I'm trying to look at who like they have minors right now, and Sample Ranta, Ben Myers, Oscar Allison, Alex Bokesh, like they don't. Maybe Jean-Luc Foudy, but even then, like they don't really have another center. So yeah, you might be right. He really might be their second line center right now.
Yeah,
unless
it's all on Alex Newhook.
They move one of Rantanen into.
Well, but that's so tough.
Rantanen
right?
and Landeskog. You don't want to do that. I don't think you want to break up that top line of Landeskog, McKinnon.
I think Landeskog is the most likely guy to move down, and Nichushkin takes that top line left wing, and you go McKinnon, Rantanen, and Nichushkin, and then Landeskog plays the wing during play, but takes the draws like he did for McKinnon, right? And then it becomes on that top line of McKinnon maybe taking some more responsibility on the draws or splitting that responsibility with Rantanen, like happened on occasion last year. So, I mean, that if I was Bednar, and Bednar's a lot smarter than I am, that's probably the decision I would make, just to maybe get some leadership on that second line with Gabriel Landeskog, and because you're going to have guys like Rodriguez and Lehkonen and maybe Newhook that are going to be on that second line, I think the best guy to probably put there would be Landeskog. And then Nichushkin, I think, can fill in admirably on that top line and play the similar role that Landeskog did with McKinnon and Rantanen. I think that's their best bet of recreating some depth in that lineup, and the projections have that as the case. Whether they go into the season or that, we'll have to see. But it is hard to split up that line. But if I had to pick a guy, I think Landeskog is probably the best suited to be that second line guy to kind of lead that line.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think it's weird because I think just stylistically, Landeskog provides a really, really great element to what Nathan MacKinnon does, creating space, using his body, going to the front, allowing MacKinnon to be able to, kind of play on the edges and cut into the inside, right? Like he's not a perimeter player, but like
defenders
he has the ability to open up the whole team, obviously. Yeah. Exactly. Open up the center of the ice and drive in, but I don't know that you want to pull Rantanen off that line. Like, I think MacKinnon Rantanen is such a powerful one too. Like, it almost makes the most sense, like you're saying, to move, and even moving Arturi Lehkonen up, and having it be like Nichushkin, Landeskog, and Rodriguez, or because I guess if you drop Rodriguez in and he's your quote unquote 2C with Nichushkin and Landeskog, then I think maybe you feel a little bit better about him being quote unquote your second line center and giving Newhook a little bit more time to develop in a third line role. But they might not have that luxury.
Yeah, I mean, every team in this division has question marks. That's the the interesting thing. I think you can look in some other divisions and say, okay, every team has question marks, but there's a few favorites where like, yeah, this team kind of checks all the boxes. But we talked Nashville briefly. Depth-wise, they look like they could be pretty good. It's just the names on paper. There's no guarantee that that's going to be the same thing as last year. It's like that top line. Forsberg's the best bet to just be the same type of player, a guy who's going to put up 30 to 40 goals and be a point per game if not better. But Granlund returning to being a 60-point player, can he do that again next year? Duchesne being a 40-40 guy in a 78-game season, he had 86 points last year. Is that going to be possible? Now maybe he's on the wing now and there's a little bit more freedom there. He doesn't have the defensive responsibility, so that really opened up the game for him. And then Johansson had kind of a sneaky bounce-back year with 63 points next year, and he's going to be playing with probably Niederreiter, maybe Janot or Tolvanen. And then Tomasino's a good young rookie for them. So they've got the guys to get it done. And then that defense is one of the best in the division, and Yossi is just a complete animal on the back end. He's going to lead that for them. And then we talked about Saros already. So they're an interesting team to watch, too. They're going to be a lot of fun. But again, in that same boat as even Winnipeg, right? And things could go really well, and on paper they should be able to compete and do well, and they could fight for a spot. But if you saw them out of the playoff picture in February, March, you maybe wouldn't be super surprised, right? Like you could see the wheels fall off. Like it's possible for them to be in both spots.
Yeah, I completely agree. I guess kind of a question that I have is like, I think we would agree that in some order, and I imagine we would agree, but in some order, or agree on the order, but in some order, I think it's fair to say MacKinnon and Makar are the two best players in the division.
Yeah.
Who's the third best player in the division? Because to my mind, there are at least three guys who jump right to the top of the list for potentially being that guy, in Kaprizov, Robertson, and Yossi.
I think Rantanen's in there too.
Yeah. I
it's tough to put three players from Colorado, right? But
yeah, I think that's the thing for me is I would be hard pressed to put Rantanen above Kaprizov or Robertson, just because we've seen them do what they've done with less team talent. But I don't think it's a ridiculous thing to say at all. And that's before you even get to Devin Taves, who was probably one of the 4 or 5 best defenders. Well, I don't know, maybe Devin Taves, like in the division, like you've got Makar, Yossi, Heiskanen, maybe Ryan McDonough still. I still think he has a lot to give. I don't know that Joshua Morrissey is anybody I'm super excited about from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah.
It's a really, really weird year because all of these teams have strengths. All of them have question marks. And, I almost would be, I would almost be more prepared for net just almost lock up that 3-4 spot in the division and just play a very kind of simple, structured games, win 3-2, 2-1 more nights than they lose. And, just kind of get in and see, and again, like you said, the question is going to be is if they can find, that scoring. Philip Forsberg's really the only guy on that team, like you said, that you can kind of trust to hit similar numbers to what he put up last year. You know what I mean? Like Duchesne put up 43 and 43, and I just don't know that you can expect that. And Roman Josi put up 73 assists, which again, you just can't ask that of a guy year in and year out. That's just, not the way that this works. And so, they've got Tanner Jeannot, who's going to be good for them, I think, and they've got play just going to be about, are they able to find enough goals, enough nights to raise their ceiling to a level that maybe they can compete or push for that, second division spot? But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good segue into Dallas because you talk about raising goals. That's been the biggest question for the Stars. Defensively, they were among some of the best teams in that division last year. Rick Bowness, notable defensive-minded coach, a guy who really drills in the principles on the defensive side of the game, but that has come at a lack of scoring goals. They had the 21st ranked offense in the league last year, I think averaging 2.84 goals per game, the sixth worst goals for total in the Western Conference. They just could not get it done offensively. Now, that's not a detriment to that top line, because that top line is one of the best in hockey with Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski. It's the rest of the team after that. And if you had traveled back maybe 6 years in time and showed this second line on paper, at least two of them, you'd say, oh, man, this is a team that is going to challenge for the Stanley Cup because they got Benn and Seguin on their second line. Doesn't matter who you put with them. But those guys scored, neither of them, I think, scored over 50 points last year. It's a tough year, tough couple of years for Benn and Seguin. They've been, I think, openly criticized by the owner at times for not getting it done. That's the question.
Team president.
Team president, okay, yeah. But, yeah, they are the guys that have to get it done. Those were the notable acquisitions and notable players on this team. You've got young guys who stepped in and taken over them, which is fine. But you need to have that secondary offense coming for those guys, and that's one of the bigger questions for Dallas going into this offseason. They've got a new coach now in Pete DeBoer, who is like Rick Bowness. I mean, he drills in the principles on the defensive side of the game, but there's a little bit more to the offensive side of the game in Pete DeBoer coach teams. He's still, the principles will still be there, which I think is good because Dallas is a good defensive team, and they should be with the personnel they have. But hopefully that unlocks things for Benn and Seguin, because that's going to be the key thing for them. Because outside of that top line, the only real two notable offensive players on this team are Benn and Seguin. They have to be 50-plus point players next year, if not more, for the Stars to be a competitive team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the scoring from last year, and it's Pavelski 81, Robertson 79, Hintz 72. Mm-hmm. Drop, Seguin 49, Klingberg 47, Benn 46. Drop, Heiskanen 36. Like, at a certain point, Heiskanen is going to need to crack that 45, 50 point mark if they want, to kind of remain competitive. And look, okay, real quick, let's just wrap up, I guess, real quick, a little bit of the division stuff. I think we can all agree that there's literally no fucking reason until the deadline to talk about Arizona or Chicago.
Yeah, I just left them out.
That's the only point at which they're going to be relevant or interesting. I don't think they're going to make any moves.
And that's just because Seth Jones and Jake Chychrun could get moved out of their teams.
Nobody's going to take Seth Jones off anybody's hands because he's not good and he makes way too much money. But yeah, you've got Chychrun and you've got maybe even
Kane.
You've got Chychrun, you've got Kane, and then you've also got their ability to like eat salary for teams, kind of pick up some picks and prospects and ways that way. So, I think it's fair to say that this is a same division, and that's being a little generous to Winnipeg and Dallas. Because again, Dallas has, like we were filling out like kind of our cheat sheet for this and for the strength for this team. Like, I think if you just said based on starting lineup, 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goalie. Like, I don't know that there's too many better 6-man units than what Dallas can run out there with Ottinger, Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, Heiskanen, and Sutter or Lindell. Like those are good teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look at it, like
that's a good six.
the teams that you start thinking of that could be better are the top teams in the league, right? Where you say, okay, Tampa Bay could probably be up there, Colorado's up there,
Yes.
Calgary
Yes.
now is up there, right? Or even Calgary last year would have been up there. But you're in the discussion with teams that were top of their divisions last year, right? So they are in that.
Ottinger's better than anybody in Tampa,
Yeah.
or is better than the goalie in Toronto.
Yep.
Uh,
And the defense core,
Heiskanen
Heiskanen's better than
the defenseman in Toronto. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
so you're in that quality. It's just then there's that drop off that you mentioned where it goes down, and I think with Heiskanen, he's been held back there, if anything. And it's not even the 36 points are the fact that he was a second power play guy last year. No, there's no Klingberg now. They should hopefully get playoff bubble Heiskanen now, where he was a point per game player in that playoff run because Klingberg really wasn't getting it done. That's what they're hoping for. I could see a 55 point season from Heiskanen just with full power play minutes being on that top unit with Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, and whoever else they want to throw out there, whether it's Ben or Sagan on that top unit. Heiskanen's going to pick up points just from that alone. Add another 10, 15 points to his total from just being on that power play unit. He'll be fine. So, and then I guess it's Suter as the second guy on that pair. Then at that point, with Suter being there as that guy, it's really the four around him plus Ottinger. I love Ryan Suter, don't get me wrong. He's not the Ryan Suter of old, but he certainly is capable, at least, of making that pairing a little bit better.
Uh-oh, I fucked up.
Can you hear me?
Shit.
Hey, you good?
Hey, I'm sorry. Yeah, my
No, it's
internet
good.
was stalling, and so I went to switch it to the 5G feed, and I wasn't thinking.
No, it's all good. It's still everything's intact, so it's still going.
Okay, cool.
So I can just come in and edit it out after, so it's all good. So the last thing I was talking about was
Heiskanen.
and his Suter like the odd man out, but he's still a good player. He's just not the Ryan Suter of old.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, I think Suter is going to have to be a big part of this team, even if it's just play 20 minutes a night, play good, strong, good, solid, simple defense, just kind of, kind of a Cam Fowlery type game where it's just get to the puck in your own end, start skating immediately, make a first pass, and let everybody else just kind of go and run away with it and just kind of sit back and because he doesn't have obviously the legs. He's still a good skater, but he's not going to have the legs. He's not going to be having the offensive impact I think that at one point he was able to have. It's going to be about, I think Lindell and Heiskanen is still a really good pair. I really like Esa Lindell. I think there's limitations obviously to his abilities, but as far as defensive defenseman goes, like he's great. He's physical. He's he's strong. Like he plays well in his own end. He blocks shots. He does all that kind of crap that frees up someone like Heiskanen to just be this incredibly scary, dynamic speed demon skater. And the thing with Heiskanen, he's only like 22, 23 this year. So he still has plenty of room to grow. And I think what you said about Klingberg being out of the picture should be a huge boon for him is absolutely right. I wasn't even really thinking about it that way as far as his ability to just eat more minutes in more offensive-minded situations now that Klingberg isn't around. I guess, just kind of talking about their need for offense, I mean, is this a situation where they maybe need to rush one of their younger guys? Like, right? Like, do they maybe try to push a Lamoureux or a Johnson or a Stankoven like into the pros quickly? Like, Logan Stankoven's ability to score would be a huge boost for this team because like Gurionov just hasn't been that guy.
Yeah.
Kiviranta been. I don't even think Kiviranta's still there anymore. Like
he's there, but he had that kind of breakout little run, and then it's nothing since then. I think it might have been that playoff run they had too.
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, So I just, I think this is a team that if they're going to get any surprise offense, it is going to have to come from somebody on an ELC.
Yeah, I mean they got better because Mason Marchment I think is better than what Radulov was giving them. So I think they got better. I really like Mason Marchment. I think he fits the Pete DeBoer system really well from what he does, just being kind of a play driving winger from what we saw what he did last year in Florida. I think he could be a good fit with Ben and Seguin or with Ben. I personally think my roster breakdown. I think they should break up that top line. I still think Hinson and Robertson together. I think there could be a benefit of Seguin moving up to that top line and running something like Marchment, Ben, Pavelski down on that second line if things aren't running well. Because you need to get Ben and Seguin going. And I think Pavelski is going to get it done for you no matter what. Maybe he doesn't get 80 points, but if you can get Seguin going on that top line with Hintz and Robertson, and Pavelski is going to be able to go down there with Ben and Marchment and kind of do their thing and be a kind of a nice secondary scoring unit, that could work. I could see that. Well, I think Marchment, like you said, Marchment's going to add to that. I think he's better than Radulov. But yeah, I think with the young players, Stankoven probably has the best shot of anybody. And when you look at the depth on this team, the bottom six being Marian Studenic, Faxa, Glendening, Kiviranta, Gurionov, and Jacob Peterson, he's got a shot easily to break into that third line role at the very least, and get a 9-game look. Wyatt Johnston and Maverick Bourque are probably their next two top young forwards that are in the prospect pool. I don't know if they're ready, and I can't see them handing 9-game trials to all three of them, let alone two of them. So I would say if anybody has the inside track, it's probably Logan Stankoven. And with the way this team is set up, he could definitely lock down a role for at least 30, 40 games, if not the entire year, if things go well for him. And I think in the minors, I know Ty Dellandrea is still there, so there's a roster spot. Maybe he jumps up. Offensively, he's not at the same level as a guy who can contribute and be a playmaking, a point getter on the wing or at center or anything like that. But he definitely adds something where you could bring him in and he's maybe better than what they're getting from Studenic or Faxa, or you can shove Faxa down in the lineup or something like that. So there is a chance where these young players step in. And again, like we talked about with Minnesota and Rossi, and Nashville with Tomasino and Tolvanen, basically all the other teams on this list, is the difference maker for them is these young guys stepping up, as it is every year for a lot of teams, is if their young players can step in and provide some supplementary offense to their team, like this becomes a whole different situation for them where they're finally getting that secondary scoring. Because Robinson's going to get it done. Hintz and Pavelski are going to get it done, and it just comes to what the other guys can do and who can come into this lineup and provide a spark to get them going.
So here is my question, because I would be very hard pressed to break up that top line just because they fucking carried this team last year.
Yeah.
Do you think there is a world in which you can play Stankoven between Marchment and Seguin and give someone who's young, who has, nothing but like energy and upside and all this stuff, like for Seguin to kind of set up, because Stankoven's a goal scorer. And if you put him with an Energizer Bunny, forecheck, dirty work kind of type, with Mason Marchment, and then you give them a guy who like there are issues that like Seguin is I think his injuries have severely limited his ability to move around the ice, but if he doesn't have to move all that much and he can just kind of be a smart, strong playmaking player on the wing, cut down on some of his responsibilities defensively and just kind of allow him to try to make plays from the outside. Like I wonder if now then you go, Faxa and Gurionov and Ben, like that's not a bad third line. And now you've got Glendening down on that fourth line instead of having to kind of shoehorn him into the fourth line. Now, obviously, a lot of that it requires Stankoven to be ready. And I personally do not have enough familiarity with where he's at in his development to say if he is or isn't. But like, he's good. And a lot of the people that, like, I know me and you both trust about prospects and player development, like they really like Logan Stankoven and what he can bring to this team. So I think he might be the best bet that they have as far as somebody who can kind of help lift the floor up on this team and keep them from being, at best a second wild card team.
Well, yeah, I mean, the knock on Logan Stankoven, if you want to call it that, has always been his size. He's 5'8", 5'9", right? So that's always going to be the question mark there. But when you take that out of the equation and you just look at pure production, he's at that point now where he's too good for junior. After last year, he had 104 points in 59 games, 45 goals, and then he went into the playoffs and had 17 goals and 31 points in 17 games. Like, he's just too good for that league. There's no reason to send him back, which is why I think if anybody gets a chance, it's probably him. And I do agree with that. I think if you're going to at least give him a 9-game trial, you got to set this guy up to succeed. You got to play. You can't play him with Faxa and Kiviranta or whoever on that third line and hope things go well for him, that he's going to be able to drive play with those guys. It's just not going to happen. I think if you're going to put anybody on the third line and they're still going to give 100% effort, I think Jamie Benn's probably the guy to do that, right? I don't think you put Seguin down there because then it almost feels like a demotion for Seguin. I don't think he's, and this, I don't know, I don't want to knock Seguin like this. I just don't feel like he's the player that responds well to being put on the third line. Whereas with Jamie Benn, you could say, listen, we're giving this kid a shot. You're our captain, whatever. Like, you need to drive play on this third line and be the guy down there. Seguin still gets to keep his confidence, whatever you want to call it, and be the main guy now on that second line to set things up for Marchment and Stankoven, who are going to both be Energizer bunnies on that line, and he's going to be able to kind of create space and set guys up or be the secondary shooting option on that line. So I think if you're going to work Stankoven in a lineup, that's probably the best way to do it. For me, whatever way gets you to splitting up Seguin and Ben, I think is the best option for Dallas at this point. Like, it just has not worked out with those guys on the same line together. They've tried it over and over and over again, and it hasn't worked. And I think Radulov getting out of that team is a godsend. I think don't like that guy. I've never really liked him. He's had a couple great years, so I just don't think he's the greatest guy to have in your team. And now you've got him out. The Ben Radulov Seguin thing, it worked, I think, one season, and they've kind of just stuck with that and hoped it would work. And last year it was just a nightmare. It didn't work out. With Radulov gone, I think this is a new coach, best time ever to split these two up and see what they can do. And if that means keeping that top line together, like you said, which is ideal because of what they did last year, and keep that chemistry going, if that means putting Stankoven in and moving Seguin to center, playing him with Marchment, to give Marchment a good shot to succeed, and moving Ben to that third line, that's probably the best thing they can do. Like, that's probably the ideal optimal lineup for them to be able to do that. And listen, I wouldn't put it past Pete DeBoer to do that. He's made some pretty ballsy roster decisions in his previous coaching positions, and not afraid to move guys around. And I'll repeat myself again, but I think if anybody is the right guy to move out of that top six is Jamie Benn. I think he'll be the one that would respond the best to being moved out of there.
Yeah, well, I think the other part of it, right, is the thing with Seguin is an inverse mirror, I guess, of what you're talking about with Stankoven, right? Because, like, the thing with Seguin is he is a playmaker. So moving him down in the lineup isn't necessarily going to be the thing that allows him to kind of find his form again, right? Like, I think you are right that, like, if you're going to move him, it's up to be with those, younger skill production guys, and maybe you move Pavelski down. But like I said, I would be very anxious or hesitant about breaking up that top line. And I think you're right. I think, Jamie Benn isn't necessarily someone who's been known for like going down and working really hard, but I think his ability to be a physical presence on a third line,
and he can drive. He can drive play on a third line in a different like where he doesn't need to work off other players. He can be the guy that carries the puck off up in the ice, and he can just be a physical grinding type line where he still has enough skill to get it done. Where like
and he's going to go to the front of the net, and he's going to be able to produce in those kind of grimy ways, right?
And he's still going to get top power play. It's not like a complete demotion. It's just, listen, like we need this kid to get insulated in 9 games, and we'll see if he sticks around or not. And it's not, the coaching staff listens. It's not a knock on you, but you're our leader on this team. We need to get this kid in here. Doesn't work to really drop anybody else here. Like you're gonna go on the third line. We need you to be the guy here to get them going.
Yeah,
it's not another question. He's done that in the past. Like remember some of the lines he's been on that this guy's had to carry through different situations. Like he's done it in the past.
Yeah. Sorry, someone is having a fit because there's people in the hallway. Come here. Okay, fine, fuck off. He ran away, jerk. But yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. I think he's the one who, is the most likely to be able to still perform if you move him down the lineup. And, it'll be interesting. I think, we've said it, and I'm not a huge Peter DeBoer fan, right? Like, I understand that, like, where he's been, he's had some level of success, right? He's been productive in Vegas and in San Jose and in New Jersey. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think there has to be something said about the fact that when his teams get to the playoffs, they kind of turn into a paper tiger. But regardless of that, I do think from what I have heard from some people in Dallas and San Jose is that he does seem to be someone who's a little bit more of a player's coach than someone like Rick Bowness is. And, if you've got older veteran guys and you need to get the most out of them, having someone around like that who can do that and kind of help them find their form and make them feel like he's on their side, there's a lot there, right? Because, the Jim Montgomery thing just kind of went the way it went. The Rick Bowness thing was just kind of like, okay, and so it's going to be about their ability to produce on a depth level. I think one of the things that was really weird when I was just kind of looking at their stats is like they underperformed their expected goals for per 60 by almost by like a third of a goal. Yeah, they were at 219 goals for per 60, but 253 expected goals for. And like, I don't know how they fix that, right? I mean, maybe bringing in a more talented finisher like Logan Stankoven and bringing in someone who had a great year last year like Mason Marchment kind of helps address that drop from, what they're scoring versus like the opportunities that they're creating. But I think more than anything, like with this team, it's going to come down to, can they get a little bit of secondary scoring, and can Jake Ottinger be Jake Ottinger for a full season?
Yeah.
Like one of the things that was crazy that I was looking at is like, for their goals saved above expected numbers, Anton Khudobin had the worst goals saved above expected for any of them, and he only played 9 games. He gave up almost 8 goals above expected in 9 games for Dallas. That is not good. And Ottinger and I think it might have been Wedgwood. Was it Holtby?
Holtby was there for a bit, and he got injured. Yeah. Wedgwood was the guy.
They had 2 guys at negative, and then 2 guys who were about a half a goal above expected. And so, like, if they can get some decent structure and really minimize the kind of chances that they're giving up in front of Ottinger, I think Ottinger has shown he is of a quality, or he has the potential and the talent to be able to make the most of those situations. It'll just be about kind of the consistency and just kind of like where this team is at mentally. And to that end, I actually wanted to ask you, like, at what point does this Robertson thing bother you or worry you, right? Like, not like offend you or bother you personally, but like, at what point do you worry that it bleeds into the season to come?
Yeah, and it's very tough. They don't have a lot of cap space to sign him right now, so I think they have to make some roster moves to even get him in. They've only got about $6.3 million. And I think it's drawn on so long as we've seen a lot of these extensions to some guys around the league that, in my opinion, are not as good as Jason Robertson, that may have now influenced that contract discussion where he's like, okay, I see Jordan Kyrou getting over $8 million. I see Robert Thomas getting over $8 million. I see this guy getting over $8 million. And, like, I'm better than these guys. I have better numbers than these guys. I had a better season than these guys. If I'm going to sign for 8 years, I want more than this. I'm assuming, I mean, I know they're close. I think he's going to get more than these guys. I think he deserves more than these guys. It's probably going to be still under 9, but it's going to be close. It's probably 8.75 to $9 million. But it is concerning the closer you get to the season. As these get drawn out, is he going to be able to play? Because he's not under contract right now. And now you're getting into, preseason territory. We've already seen, obviously, the Ducks, I guess rookie season territory, and preseason's coming up soon as well, where this is where you want to get it resolved in the next couple of weeks here. You cannot go into October and not have him signed. So it has to get done, next week or the week after, these last 2 weeks of September, or it gets really concerning. You want to have this wrapped up before you start ramping up your season, getting ready and building chemistry, and then all of a sudden you come in game one and Robinson can't play. Because he's, especially on a team like this where he's your main guy, it was different in a sense with Toronto when William Nylander went all the way to December. He's a key player for them, but he wasn't their top guy. For Dallas, you need this guy locked up. You have to get it done. You have to make it work. Haggling this point over, $500K this way, $500K that way. Just pay the guy. Pay him, lock him down, get it over with, get ready for the year because you need this guy locked in and ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking at it, like you said, they have $6.3 million right now in cap space, and the one thing I wonder is, would Jason Robertson take $3 by $7 million if you told him that literally takes you to the end of Jamie Benn's contract, at which point you will probably be a $10 million plus player, and we will actually be able to afford you to pay you like a $10 million player. But right now, I mean,
that might be, if I was Jason Robertson, that would be the position I'd be going in. To get paid more.
I mean, yeah, I think it's weird, right? Because he doesn't have any arbitration rights. He doesn't have any leverage, right? Other than holding out, just straight holding out. He has nothing here. So, I could see them just being like, look, we're going to give you 3 by 6, and you can either take it or leave it, but that's all we're giving you. Based on the way that the owner has talked and the way that this team has kind of managed its finances and stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if they told them, we're going to give you 3 by 5, and you can either take it or not. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? If you hold out for a year, that's another year before Jamie Benn or another more year towards Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin coming off, which means we're going to have more money sooner than later. And you're still not going to have arbitration rights. You have to play. Yeah. So, we can just make you do this again next year, and you can either benefit from that or you can not. But I wonder, do they look on it moving on from Joel Kiviranta? Do they try to move on from, I don't know, Yanni Hakanpää maybe, or do they try to move Anton Khudobin out? He makes 3 1/3 for 1 more year. I think that is a contract that, if you're Arizona, if you're Anaheim, if you're Chicago, that you're calling about. And being look, you got to pay this kid. So either we'll trade for the kid or give us something to take on Khudobin and we can have a conversation. I don't think they would do it, but I would love to get Leon Bichelle to take on Anton Khudobin.
I think for Dallas right now,
that puts them at almost 9.5, which more than able to sign Robertson.
I think, I can't remember Khudobin's status. I think he might be out for the year.
I believe that is the expectation. I also wouldn't be surprised if he thinks he's going to be able to play this year.
So they should be able to put him on LTIR, which would free up that 3.3 and give them 9.6 which is enough to sign him. I think the big thing for them too is they don't want to be right up against the cap. There's not a lot of flexibility here for them to move guys around at the deadline or to acquire, because this is a team that if they're doing well, they're going to need to add pieces. They're not at that caliber yet where I think, and unless Stankoven pops off, but even then I think you still want to add a couple depth pieces to this team. That if you lock up Jason Robinson at $9 million by 8 years, you've got $600K in cap space to work with for the entire year. There's not a lot of flexibility in guys here that you can move around, and you still got to pay Rupe Hintz next year as well. And then the only cap space you have coming off the books are some RFAs that you would want to likely bring back, and Pavelski's 5.5 is a UFA, and then that LTIR space from Anton Khudobin, his contract expires next year as well. So I could see some merit in obviously the player, and Robinson wanting a 3x7 or something like that, so that you say, hey, you sacrifice $1.5 to $2 million over the next 3 years per year, but you're going to make that up when you sign a $10 million contract when Ben and Sagan's contracts expire, because you're going to be worth that, and we're going to pay you that, and you'll get that money back as the back end. Help us out now, we'll help you out later type thing.
It's a LeBlanc deal.
Yeah.
Where they were like, you're a $1 million player this year, wink, wink, wink. And he was like, okay. And now it's like, that was pointless. And I would like to actually get the money I was owed.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think this gets resolved fairly quickly, because they're going to want this is the one guy they need to get locked down and his contract in place before the season starts. They can't, like I said, they can't extend this to October. It gets dicey if you leave it that long.
Yeah, no, that is the thing for me is I just re-signing Pavelski is incontrovertibly a decision that you only make if you expect to go for it. If you expect to go for it, you can't not have Jason Robertson on the team. And so it's just kind of like, what are you going to do? Like, do you want to risk pissing off who might be the best player on the team? Jason Robertson shot 18% last year, but like by that same token, Rupe Hintz shot 17%. Joe Pavelski shot only 12.5%. Like, I don't know. They don't have a ton of finishing talent, and getting rid of someone like Jason Robertson, who is, a dynamic offensive player, it just feels so short-sighted. And I don't know that they have a ton of options. I'm not sure what the best case scenario is for them in that sense, but it's just, I don't know that they have the leverage they think that they might have here. Because if Robertson's not on this team, they're not competitive. They just don't have the horses. Yeah. And if you're not competitive, then why the fuck did you just give Joe Pavelski a no move clause? Yeah. Like, I just they might, man, I don't know, maybe they have to move on from Dennis Gurianov. Like, they got to start moving some of these guys, right? Like, Radek Faksa has a 5-team no-trade list, so maybe he's the guy that they can move, but he's not great, but he's a perfectly fine third liner.
Yeah, I think they like what they have in here. But yeah, Gurianov, right now, the depth chart has him relegated to fourth line wing. I think, and he's making over 3 or around 3. Maybe not. I can't remember what he was making, but more than he probably should be.
Gurianov is 2.9.
2.9, yeah. So he'd be a guy, and I believe he's out of contract next year, so he's a guy you could move and get out from, and maybe even, I doubt you'd want to eat salary, but if you had to get out from it and get something in return, you'd love it, like maybe a cheeky deal with the Leafs to bring in Nick Robertson over and play him with his brother instead, and that helps convince him to sign the 3x7 instead of a 9x8 or something like that. But yeah,
I wonder if somebody will try to get Nick Robertson out of Toronto as a way of helping Toronto solve whatever issues there are. Right, like they have 75 issues. So
yeah,
but like I wonder if and maybe kind of Caleb Jones it and be like, hey Seth, we got Caleb. and be like, oh, Jason Robertson, legitimate MVP candidate. You've got your brother. You want to come play with your brother?
Yeah, the new brother duo from in Dallas, other than the Bens. Now it's the Robertsons.
Yeah, no kidding. So, okay, real quick. I want to just, how many players on Dallas do you think finished the season last year with double-digit individual expected goals? And this is all strengths.
I would love to. I would think it would just be the top line. But I'm sure there's a few guys in there, so I'll say 5 guys.
So they have 12 guys finished with double-digit individual expected goals.
Yeah.
Jacob Peterson had, where'd it go? There's my number. No, you idiot. Stop hitting that button. Jacob Peterson had 10 flat. Then there's 3 other guys. Heiskin and Faxa Raffle finished above 10. Gurionov at 13.5. Radulov had 14. Glendening had almost 15. I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah.
And then Sagan and Ben had 21 and 23. Robertson 27. Pavelski 30. And Rupe 31. Like, it's such a weird team. Like, again, like, the quality of the 6 guys that they can put on the ice at the start of every game is incredibly high. And it's just, can they get enough from everybody else? And I don't know if they can. And I don't know what to expect because, like I said, like, I'm just not a huge Peter DeBoer fan. Like, I just don't know that he's the guy that I want trying to turn my fringe playoff team into a legitimate dark horse contender. Like,
yeah.
What's the upside? Like,
I feel like they I know they're desperate because of the Pavelski 1 year, Ben and Sagan, they need to get this done now, and they wanted a guy who's got a track record. And it's tough to make the decision to go for, a no-name up-and-coming guy. This almost feels like a temporary Band-Aid, right? Bring a guy in that has a track record. If it works, great. If not, this guy's gone in 2 or 3 years. And then you
even
move on.
Even if it works, he's gone in 2 or 3 years. That seems to be
that's generous to say that.
Longer than that.
So, and I think that the plan is, or maybe not the plan, but the assumption is if things don't go well, when Ben and Sagan are done with this team, their contracts are up. If they don't come back, maybe Ben comes back, but whatever, right? Like, when that era for them is over and you move into the long-term era of Heiskin and Robertson, Hintz, Stankoven, new guy comes in at that point. Maybe the up-and-coming coach that you can kind of build around with that young core that's already in place. But yeah, this felt like we need a guy, or we want a guy who's got a track record here, who's coached in the NHL, who's had success in the NHL. I'm not a big Pete DeBoer fan either, but you can look at his track record and say, all right, you know what, like that's what they are aiming for. At least it seems like that. No, I'm sure. Like, listen, why can't I remember his name? Barry Trotz was probably at the top of everybody's list, but he just wasn't ready to come back. So
here's my question, somewhat along those lines. If you're Dallas and you go back to when none of the major coaching vacancies had been filled, right? Wouldn't you almost rather have John Tortorella?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, with that roster,
really,
with the roster they have,
like,
I don't see him having an issue with players there, right? I mean, like, all those guys.
I mean, yeah, Jamie Benn and Esa Lindell are going to play 40 minutes a night under John Tortorella, but still, like, yeah. I'm not.
There's no clear guys that you look at and say, oh, John Tortorella is going to have an issue with these guys, right? Like, he just likes guys that work hard, compete, and like the Stars are full of those guys, right? I mean, a lot of veteran guys that you respect, and Sagan, Ben, Pavelski, Robertson, and Hintz, from what all you can see, are guys who give everything on a nightly basis. They don't create a lot of drama off ice or anything like that. Like, they're just your typical NHL guys. So I could see it as being a fit for sure. For John Tortorella, it's probably, or at least for me, it'd be a more desirable destination than Philadelphia.
We are going to get to that division, and I have takes about Philadelphia. Yeah. So I do not get why everybody is writing them off. I genuinely don't understand.
Oh, I don't think there's no way they're as bad as they are last year. But if I'm going to put those two teams on paper, I like Dallas over Philadelphia. I just like what they have a little bit more. If I'm a coach coming in, and what I can work with there than what seems like a hot mess, poorly built team by Chuck Fletcher in Philadelphia. Now, like I said, I do agree that I think they're better than they're giving credit for. They're not the worst team in that division. But man, I think Tortorella's fit in Dallas could have been really nice.
So here's an insane fucking thing. Okay, Dallas has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys out of 22, sorry, that have signing bonus money, which isn't really that bad. One of them is an ELC signing bonus, doesn't count. Essa Lindell makes $1 million that he already got paid. Colin Miller got $500K this year. Ottinger got his $1 million. And then you get to the top. And Jamie Benn has $5.5 million in signing bonuses for the next 3 years. And Tyler Seguin goes $8 million, 5.5, 5.25, $6 million, 5.75.
Yeah.
And then he's a free. Like, Dallas is very quickly moving to the top of my list of teams that need a compliance buyout. Because, like, if anybody needed a lockout to save whatever is left of a window, it's these fucking guys, man. Because, you know, again, like, even like with the Sharks, I think me and you have talked about this before. I don't know, but like, you know, if you look at Marc-Edouard Vlasic's contract, I think it's next year. If they buy him out next summer, it's not a huge issue, right? Like, it's still going to hurt. It's, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff, because it is a buyout. It is supposed to be punitive. But, like, they could kind of get out of that deal. There is no world. Like, Seguin and Ben basically put them in Sutter Parise hell if they buy him out. And you know, again, like,
It was the old era of contracts, right? Now everything's front loaded, but these are back loaded.
Well, that, and it's, you know, these were deals where these teams, like, these players knew there was going to be a lockout at some point.
Yeah.
And, you know, they kind of used, I think it was COVID is how they avoided the lockout this time. But this is all guys who are like, look, there's going to be a lockout and I'm not going to not get paid. So you're going to give me signing bonus money.
Yeah.
And, like, I have no problem with players doing that. I'm all for players getting paid. It's just one of those things that, like, it is a hard cap league and this is a reality. And so, like, man, I mean, they almost have to go for it, like, right now.
Yeah, well, that's why you see the coach come in and
anything out of Ben and Seguin.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key for this team. To do anything, they need to get more out of Ben and Seguin. They need 60-plus points from both of those guys to get anything done. Because you know Robinson, Hintz, and Pavelski are going to be 70-plus point guys. You need that depth from Ben and Seguin to get it done, to do something more than what they've done. And the thing is, like, Seguin's a couple seasons removed from being an 80-point guy. Obviously, injuries have hampered him a little bit, and then the COVID season he was off. Last year, all things considered, wasn't an awful year. There's just that big gap between that top line and his line. And for a guy you're paying almost $10 million, you need him to be the guy that's putting up the 60 to 70 points, right? Not Hintz, who's making just over 3, and Robertson, who was he on his ELC up until this season, or was he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, and Pavelski, who arguably, if you're Seguin or Ben, you should be doing just as good, if not better, than Pavelski, right? Like, you're at that same quality of player. You should be.
I mean. Look,
I know you love Joe.
You know how I feel about Joe. Like, I love that dude. Like, I think he is definitively a better player than Jamie Benn ever was.
You know, we haven't seen too many guys. When a guy leaves a team that he's been with for a long time, he's had a lot of success, and everybody's like, oh man, like, he's getting old now. He's going to go to this team and suck. Like, that happens so often. Joe Pavelski proved that wrong, proved, like, how good of a player he is. He just slotted right in there and kept going and got maybe better, right? Like, that's the crazy thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I get that he's, like, actually very good, but I'm sorry. If you're San Jose, I cannot see a world in which you don't rather have Joe Pavelski than Logan Couture right now.
Yeah. Joe Thornton's back skating with a teal helmet on.
I saw.
It means he might come back. Would you not rather have Joe Pavelski right now instead of Joe Thornton?
Just, jeez Louise. You know what? Honestly, though, if you're San Jose, I think you can say having Joe Thornton in to just be around, William Eklund and some of these other young guys. But again, they just gave Thomas Hertl that fucking extension. So, what are they doing?
Yeah.
It's
crazy for me that Joe Pavelski at 37, 38 has a career year in points last year. That's wild. That's wild.
It rocks.
Yeah. No, that's awesome for him.
And I just, so, I mean, look, this Dallas thing is just so strange, right? So let me say it this way. Where do you think is the most likely spot that they finish in the division? Because they finished 4th last year.
Yeah, right around there. They just haven't done anything different. Again, they're in that mix where I think it's Colorado, and then I think St. Louis is slightly for me above the other teams, and then it's Minnesota, Winnipeg, Nashville, Dallas. Right in that mix of 4 teams will be fighting for those remaining spots. So Dallas, I think they could finish 3rd. If all things go well, they could get up in that 2nd spot if St. Louis and Colorado struggle. But it's going to be a mix of those teams, because you look at those 4 teams in Dallas, Nashville, Winnipeg, and Minnesota. They all have some issues. With Dallas, it's their depth. With Winnipeg, it's the defense on their team. It's just not good enough. Nashville, it's, can the guys that were good for them last year continue to do that? Can Duchesne and Granlund and Johansson be those guys? And for Minnesota, it's Marc-Andre Fleury. Is he going to be able to be the starter? And do they have enough, guys who are going to step up and produce offense for them? So they all have question marks around them. And even the top teams do. We already got into that. Minnesota or St. Louis with Binnington, and Colorado with losing the guys that they had, but they still have all those pieces in place that you're going to say they're good enough to do well. So I think Dallas is definitely in that mix. And we've talked about that, 5-a-side, 6-a-side team. If you put their best 6 on the ice, I think they have the best 6 of those 4 teams. I think they have a better top 6, top lineup you can throw out there than Minnesota, than Winnipeg, than Nashville, maybe even than St. Louis. They might even, they might, other than Colorado, and you could argue because the goaltending is so much better than what Colorado has right now, that it's very close to being the best front 6 that you have in the division. So they have the edge there. It's just everything after that is so subpar and there's so many question marks around the next best guys in Ben and Seguin that you just can't take them to that next level. And it really is offensively, because I like Dallas's defense. I really like Miro Heiskanen. I think he's going to take his game to another level. I like Jake Ottinger. It's that 9 forwards after that top line. There's so many question marks there on what they're going to do that I can't put them there. Honestly, if they had a couple more guys, and we already talked about Stankoven coming in, and if he can really get things going, if Ben and Seguin can turn around and be good players, they are a team that I would say they have a chance to be the best team in this division. But that depth on offense is just so bad that you can't put them there right now.
Yeah, it's... I mean...
Because you have to what they have. You have to.
Yeah, you do. No, for sure. And again, like we said, they got Leon Bichelle, and I think he's going to be a good part of that defense in a couple of years. They almost screwed themselves inadvertently by Jason Robertson being ready so fast. If he was, another year away, maybe this is a very different situation.
Well, and Ruben Hintz blowing up out of nowhere too, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think it's 4 groups in the Central, and I'd say it's Colorado at the top. I think St. Louis and Minnesota are that second tier for me, because I obviously we talked about Minnesota and that there are limitations, but at the end of the day, they do still have Kirill Kaprizov.
Yeah.
And, one of the 4 or 5 best defense cores in the entire league. And, again, if some of these young guys are ready to step up, then you can see a situation there. I just think the situation is a little bit better there.
Yeah, I agree.
But then it's it's Dallas and Winnipeg and
Nashville.
And it's like, I think Winnipeg's the weakest one. I think Nashville's probably the most dependable one.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Dallas,
their Nashville's holes are, can these guys do it again? It's like they have the depth. It's just, can they do it again? Whereas Nashville,
right.
Dallas doesn't have the depth, and it's, can these guys step up?
I mean, how much different is the situation? And again, I apologize to Ducks fans for this. How different is it if they move on from Faxa or they move on from Gurionov, and they're the team that brings in Niederreiter? Like, if you added Niederreiter to Dallas, I feel very differently about this team.
They need another winger at the very least, right? That's the problem. Is Marchment, like we said, is great. Ben and Sagan on paper are good, but they don't have enough. But it's such a huge drop off after that, where your next best guy is Kiviranta or Gurionov or Faxa. Niederreiter would have been great. Anybody, any suitable top 9 forward that has signed for almost nothing over the last couple months would have been great there, but they don't have the money. They just don't have the money because they got to sign Jason Robinson. If Jason Robinson had one more year of an ELC, we would have seen them add a couple guys, and that would have been perfect for them. Just handcuffed with the timing here that they don't have enough money to add anywhere else. And they had, guys they had to lock down. Ottinger they had to lock down. Heiskanen has signed a long-term deal. Pavelski, they needed to bring him back. And Ben and Sagan make so much money that they can't do anything. But yeah, they are one more forward away from that confidence, really, of saying, okay, like, they are a better team. There is a little bit more depth here, but they just don't have it.
All right, real quick, I want to see something really quickly. If we go minimum time on ice of 150 minutes, that gets us 23 guys, okay?
Yeah.
In Dallas, how many guys do you think they had finish above 50% in expected goals for percentage?
In Dallas?
Mm-hmm. In Dallas.
I could see it being high because defensively they were good, so they limited chances against. So I've how many guys? Sorry, how many guys?
23.
23. How many finished above 50% in expected goals for?
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you this: the line, one guy at 50.29, the guy under him 49.52. So you're right. The margins are pretty small.
I'll say 14 guys.
13, very close. It's 13 skaters finish above. Like, how much better than that can they be, man? Like, this is where the hesitation with them, I think, comes. Is like, as much as, like, they're the inverse of Nashville, right? Where it's like Nashville had these guys pop off for scoring, and it's, can they do it again? For Dallas, it's like they had most of the team play pretty well, and they still couldn't get there. So, like, are there candidates here for, shooting percentage regression positively? Like, are there here, again, like, is just adding one guy like Stankoven to just add a little bit more goal scoring dynamism? Does that help take the load off of the other guys? Like, I am simultaneously talking myself farther in and farther out of Dallas as a legitimate playoff team. Like, I just think it's so strange what they are. And yeah, dude, Jason Robertson, 59.63. Rupe Hintz, 58.47. Joe Pavelski, 58.04. Like,
yeah, just upper
Thomas
echelon.
Harley was good. Joe Kiviranta.
That's the guy we haven't even talked about, Thomas Harley. Like, on the defense corps for this, he's probably the breakout candidate on that team.
Mm-hmm. He's probably. I mean, look, I think that you're 100% right. I think if we get to March and we aren't saying, man, Stankoven and Harley look pretty good right now, they're fucked. They're not recovering from that.
Yeah,
like,
or Ben and Sagan look a little bit closer to what they were.
Yeah, like,
both have to be true. You need young guys to step up, and you need like Marchment, whatever. Whether he's a point per game guy or he's not going to be that.
Right.
Marshman, he does 40, 50 points, that's fine. Ben and Sagan need to get somewhere close to 50 to 60 points for it to even be anything for them this year. They need that from those guys. They're paying those guys to be 80 to 90 point players. These guys just need to get somewhere close to what that top line is going to do and help them out, because the drop off was almost half, right? Like their point total is almost half of what that top line put up last year. They need to do better, because you're not getting offense from the third and fourth line. You're just not. So that second line is going to get used a lot, and they're going to need to produce. That's what it's going to come down to. Like at the end of the day, if you're 20, 30 games in and Ben and Sagan have 15 points each, there's a problem. And the wheels are falling off quickly if they're at that point.
So their 2022 draft class, first round defenseman, second round defenseman, third round defenseman, fourth round defenseman, fifth round goalie, sixth round winger. They have the 17th best prospect pool ranking, which, based on the fact that it feels like they haven't been very good, so it should be higher, but
yeah,
they haven't really been exceptional, so it should probably be lower. Like, feels fair to me, right? Like,
yeah. I think Wheeler had them at 10, so there's like some like they're right in that mix of 10 to 15, 10 to 20, and they're not the top 10, they're not the bottom 10. They've got a decent pool, yeah.
I mean, 17 is basically dead center, right? Yeah. 14 through 17 is the center.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like I'm looking at their cap friendly page, and they don't have a third this year or a fourth next year. Beyond that, they have all their picks but no extras. Have they put themselves in a position to where they have to be buyers?
I don't know. I mean that. Yes and no. I think they have a good enough young core and good players coming up that are going to be close that they're all going to be ready when they're ready to move on from Ben and Sagan. So in that sense, I don't think they have to. And I wouldn't sell your prospects or sell first round picks necessarily if you're not in the hunt, right? They don't have to be buyers if they're not in the position. Now, if they're in the hunt to win the division and they're in a really good if you're in trying to get in the playoffs, I'm not moving that first round pick to try and get into the playoffs. Right. If you're, in February, March, if you are, very clear first or second in that division, I could, at that point, that's going to be a late first. I could say, okay, let's move this first. Let's make a run this year. We have to go for it because things are going right for us. But I really like what they have, and I really like their young core. You've got a really good young goaltender who's going to be a starting goaltender in the future. You've got a franchise defenseman. You've got a franchise forward in Robertson. You've got Hintz. You've got Stankoven. You've got Wyatt Johnson. You've got Maverick Bourque on the way. You just drafted, like you said, 5 defensemen. Leon Bichel's on his way. Essa Lindell's
Christian Kyron seems like he might be a nice player if he can develop. Like
exactly. Thomas Harley, Delandria coming up. So you've got these young players, and they're all going to be ready by the time Ben and Sagan are done, and you've got draft picks to supplement that. I don't think there's any urgency to do it and move those picks. I'm definitely not touching the prospects. I'm not moving those guys because you need them.
No, for sure.
You need them for
100%.
the next wave that's inevitably going to be coming. The picks, I think, is all dependent on where you are. And if you are in the hunt for the playoffs, I'm not moving that first round pick to just try and get into the playoffs. If you think you have a legitimate chance, if things all go well, Stankoven comes in, Ben and Sagan resurge, the top line keeps going, whatever. Some guys step up, Delandria comes up, does well, and you're in a position, to feel like you can make a legitimate run. Moving the first at that point, which would be like, a 20 to 30 second pick in the first round, depending on where you finish, I'm fine moving it then to go out and get that forward depth that we're talking about, that they need, a Nino Niederreiter type guy, right, that you can bring in at the deadline. God forbid they have enough cap space to somehow bring in a Patrick Kane type guy, something like that to really make that push and bring in a high profile rental to make a run. If they're in that position in a good position at the deadline at that point, I'm fine with it. But not if it's to just get into the playoffs. It's not worth it for them because they have a bright future. And at that point, you just have to be honest with yourself. I know it's hard for, owners and GMs at what point to be honest with yourself at that point and just say, listen, like, it's not working out for us at this point. We'll go for it again with this same core next year. Some of the, we'll run for it, but we're not going to mortgage the future just to get into the playoffs. It's not worth it. They've got a bright future. There's no point in mortgaging it just to try and get in. And this fan base, I don't think, is that desperate either. I think they're smart enough to see what they have. I don't think there's going to be any major pressure on them to just sell it all to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's fair. Like I'm just thinking, like I really just wonder, like how. All right, so let me say it this way. I'm going to give you three guys. You tell me which one of these guys has to have as good as or better than last season for this team to really be in a position to contend for a top three playoffs. Not a top three playoff spot, but a top three spot in the division. Pavelski, Ben, Ottinger.
Has to have a better season, right?
Has to have at least as good or better than last year for this team to maintain simply being a 97, 98 point team comfortably in a 3-4 division conference playoff spot. Jeez Louise, my brain.
Yeah, it's tough because obviously it's a good question because you can make the argument for all of them, right? For me, a guy who has to at least have the same season, if not better, the most important one for me is Jake Ottinger. He has to. There's nothing. Scott Wedgwood is the guy behind. There's no Holtby. There's no Hudobin. It's Scott Wedgwood, and you're not running him. Jake Ottinger, as much as it's important for the other guys, Jake Ottinger has to have at least the same season he did last year, which was a .914 save percentage and 30 wins, 30-15-1 record. He has to at least be that good for them to do anything this year to challenge. It's very close after this. I think more so than Pavelski being a 81-point guy, because that's very tough to ask from him at 38, and I think he's going to turn 39. Or no, he just turned 38, so he'll be 38 for the entirety of the season. It's very tough to ask him to go do that or better. I think it's more important that Ben has better than 46 points in 82 games and 18 goals. He has to do better than that, if not just at least that, but he has to do better, more so than Pavelski being an 81-point guy. Because I think, again, you can plug Sagan on that top line, Marchment could go up there, Stankoven could go up there, whatever. You can get some of that offense somewhere else. If Pavelski drops off 10 points, you need to find that somewhere else, and that's why I think it's way more important that Ben has a better year than Pavelski being the same. Because it's for me, as much as, again, you love Joe and I love Joe, it's almost impossible to expect him to do better than last year, which was a career year at 38 years old. It's very, very difficult to say that. And 60 points this year, and the same Pavelski defensively and everything he does well, is a great year from him. There's not many guys at 38 that you can say, yeah, he's going to put up 60 points and he's going to do everything else well for us, and we don't have to worry about him being on the ice. We can play him anywhere and he's going to do fine.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Hockey Reference right now, and this is the thing that is maybe the scariest for me. If you just do power play points, Tyler Seguin and Jemmy Benn combined had 6 goals and 18 assists on the power play. That's not fucking good enough.
6 goals and 8 assists?
18.
Jeez.
So they had
Combined
between them
20,
what is that? 24 points.
Yeah, that's not good.
On the that is not good. Like,
and they were probably on that top unit, or at least one of them was for most of the year.
Yeah, I mean,
I think actually Hintz was on the second
Ryan
unit.
Suter and Dennis Gurianov both finished with 4 power play goals each.
Yeah.
Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn had 3 each.
Yeah.
This is the part of it where you can talk me into saying Peter DeBoer comes in and gives them a functioning power play that allows some of these other guys and a second unit to be more successful. I'm here for that. But by that same token, I'm not necessarily super excited about 31-year-old Tyler Seguin and I almost said Tyler Seguin. We almost had a new one. And 33-year-old Jamie Benn,
Yeah,
man,
when all
you
your
guys
hopes
gotta
rely on those guys, it's very tough.
You gotta have more than 6 power play goals, man.
Well, these are guys who are 30, 40 goal scorers not too long ago. And for them to have 6 power play goals combined is ridiculous. And I don't think either of them reached over 20 goals last year. Maybe Sagan did, but Ben had 18.
Sagan hit 24. Yeah.
So
he had 21 even strength goals last year. That's not nothing.
No. It's just you need the extra,
But how is that? How is it only then at that point 3 power play goals?
Yeah, not being utilized correctly or
is...
something disconnected there because there's a good enough unit for him to do well. That could be, again, the difference in unlocking Ben and Seguin is at even strength things seem to be going okay for them. The power play just wasn't there for them. If you could get them going on the power play on a unit with Heiskanen and Robertson and either Pavelski or Hintz, maybe that's it right there, right? That's the difference in 18 goals for Ben turned to 25, 49 points turned to 55. And for Seguin, 24 goals turns to 30 plus, and the points go up to 50 or 60, and there's the difference for them, and they have the personnel to do that, to get it done. And you got to find out a way to pick up these points somewhere. And yeah, like you said, 21 even strength goals is great. It's a great number. That's a decent number from Seguin.
That's fantastic.
When you're looking at a secondary scoring as a guy in a second line, that's what you hope for. But you need more, especially from a guy was on the top power play and will be on the top power play. You need more than 3. You need way more than that.
John Klingberg had more power play assists than Seguin and Ben combined.
I think they're going to be a lot. I like John Klingberg. I really like his addition for the Ducks.
No. Yeah, but, we're not talking shit about John Klingberg.
No, but I think what I was going to say is I think there was a need or something like a necessity for everything on that power play to run through John Klingberg. When you watch the Stars, everything started and kind of with John Klingberg. He was the distributor that comes back to him. Which made sense. He was great at doing that, and they really loaded up heavily on him making the decision from the blue line. I think things will change now because Heiskanen can do that, maybe not at the same level, but he's not going to be that guy. He's going to be the kind of the distributor in the sense that it's gonna all the play is going to work along the boards behind the net. It can come back to Heiskanen. He'll be a one-time option, but I think Ben and Seguin will be more involved on the power, specifically Seguin in the playmaking, and Ben can be the net front presence guy and a guy who can do that. But Seguin should hopefully then be more involved, and maybe he could be the primary, playmaker, play driver on that power play, where then Robertson is the shooting option and Hintz and Ben are kind of rotating behind the net and in front of the net. Maybe that unlocks things for him on the power play because it is tough when you're forcing everything, obviously, through Klingberg, and that shows in the power play numbers that he puts up compared to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, even if it is just, I guess, anecdotally, like it just gives you real, like, Brent Burns vibes as far as it's just like, what is the power play? Get it to the point. He's going to get a shot on, and we're going to go from there. And, let's see where John Klingberg only had 139 shots on goal last year, which is not a lot, but
he's just more so the puck mover, the primary puck mover on that power play, which is it's what he's made his money on. It's what he's a great player. He's shown he can do that. The underlying numbers support that. John Klingberg is a great play driving defenseman on the power play. So I don't blame them for doing that. But when you have a guy who demands and the system is built around him having that much of the puck on the power play, that becomes an issue for guys like Seguin and Ben in the sense of their production of, especially, I would say in Seguin, and a guy who in power plays of past has been that guy for other teams. He was that guy at one point for Dallas on the power play, and the good years for him was that guy in Boston as well, where maybe you give him a little bit of that back and you start to see some of that production come up where maybe, whether the assists or the goals go up on the power play, you just give that control a little bit back to Seguin, and the power play dynamic shifts a bit, and I think that can help, right? And again, I like John Klingberg. He's great at that role, but it is a lot to just shove everything through one guy and expect everybody else to just kind of be okay with that, especially guys who are making as much as those guys are making, right? So,
yeah, I mean, Ben makes 9.5 and Seguin is like 9.85. So, I think, and it's weird because, like, Ben at 32, 33, I think you can talk yourself into, like, look, he's a power forward. When we signed that contract, we knew it was going to be a risk, but we also knew that if his body held up just a little bit long enough, we were going to be able to get the most out of a guy who's meant a lot to this franchise, yada, 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 right? I get that. Totally cool. Sagan's only 31, and his shit is just all unfortunate injuries. Like, I'm pretty sure his hips are entirely made out of synthetic material at this point. Like, he's just had such bad luck. And, like, at 30 years old, like, a playmaking center is not someone you should be worried about having fallen this far.
Yep.
And
it's tough to say, like, his numbers last year in a vacuum, not taking into his name value, his history, how much he makes, they're not bad as a second line player. But when you look at his history and what he's done as a 30 to 40 goal scorer, 70, 80 point guy consistently, a guy who just dominates, for him to fall off like that and then to factor in the salary at that point as well, it's like, damn, yeah, like this is tough.
Yeah, and I think even if you want to remove his individual history from it, he had a good year. He did not have a great enough year that everybody under him doesn't feel pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like,
no, it does, yeah.
Like the guys above him did what they needed to do, and he was fine, but he wasn't like so great. Again, I can't get past his power play numbers.
Yeah.
The bottom of that lineup just does not have the offensive production
or capabilities to do what he could do. Yeah,
exactly. They just don't have the offensive talent, exactly, to overcome him not being a bit more impactful and a bit more dynamic. And like you said, when you've got those two guys on their contracts, right? Like, because, we did the biggest weakness for the team, and we said depth and cap flexibility. Like, they have no flexibility. Like, yes, they have $6.5 million, which is like 5 times as much as like all the teams above them. But they also haven't signed the guy who's going to get all of that.
Yeah.
And so, like again, we put one of the things we do for our little cheat sheet is like best contracts, worst contracts, and like the worst contracts were easy, and the best contract we said is, I put this in there. I was like, whatever Jason Robertson signs, any deal he signs is the best contract on the books. If he signs 8x8, and you want to say Jake Ottinger is a potential Vezina candidate who's only making $4 million and is very young, sure, totally open to that conversation. But it's those fucking guys. That's it.
Yep. Heiskanen, Robertson,
maybe Heiskanen,
Ottinger, and you could throw Hintz is a really kind of just a not fair one to throw in there because he's on the last year of after a breakout year. But the young core, they're all on great deals, and Robinson's good enough no matter what he makes.
Yep.
It's gonna be worth it. But then you go to the bad contracts and it's the leftover guys. It's Sagan and Ben who are getting paid so much money but not producing at that level.
So, what is the worst case scenario for this team for you? What is the
finishing
actual
the
bottom
third
of the
worst team in this division? Because they're not worse than Chicago and Arizona, so it would be finishing as the third worst team in this division. That's the worst case scenario, being somehow jumped up over by Nashville and Winnipeg, and finishing, below those teams and well out of the playoff hunt by March. Like, that's
right, for sure.
That's probably the worst case because they can't get it for any of these teams we talked about. There's absolutely no way they finish worse than Chicago or Arizona. There's no way. So the worst scenario here is finishing as the worst team out of everybody else in that division. That's the worst case for any of these teams.
Is there a shot in hell that they miss the playoffs but finish outside the bottom 10?
Hold on. Now I got to.
Yeah, I gotta find.
Because I know that race is going to be very close for me. So them finishing outside the playoffs, I think that doesn't mean they're going to have a low amount of points. Montreal is going to be worse than them. Buffalo, I still think Detroit. New Jersey. I think the Islanders, Columbus, Arizona, Chicago, San Jose, Seattle. So yeah, but I think there's a legitimate chance that they miss the playoffs, but they're not in the bottom 10. I think there's for me, I could name 10 to 11, maybe 12 teams that I could say are worse than them or have a chance to be worse than them.
So yeah, last year they were the 15th team in the league.
Yeah.
They made the playoffs, and then Nashville made the playoffs, and then the next most points in the league was Vegas at 94, and we obviously know that they missed. I am not 100% sure, and I'm not doing this just to like argue with you or whatever, but like I am not 100% sure that there's a situation in which they miss the playoffs and don't finish between, what would that be, 16 and 11, like, because Ottawa's going to be better. New Jersey could be really feisty this year. Philly could be feisty. Seattle could be feisty. I think you're 100% right. I think Arizona, I think Montreal, I think San Jose, probably Buffalo and Detroit and Anaheim. But other than that, like, I don't know how many of these teams I think that if they miss the playoffs, they're better than.
Yeah.
Man.
It's really
okay.
tough
So
situation.
then, what is the best case scenario for you? Like, let me say it this way: is there a world in which they win the division?
Yeah, I think there is.
You think so?
Yep, I think there is. I think there's, and again, we've mentioned every team in this division outside of Chicago and Arizona. I think there's a world where any of these teams can win this division. And I don't think I could say that for maybe any of the other divisions. But things are just so weird in this division where, again, Chicago or the top teams in Colorado have taken kind of a step back. And then some of the other teams have gotten better. Where, I think despite everything with Dallas, I think they have gotten slightly better than last year because they added Mark Schmidt. And I think losing John Klingberg opens things up for Heiskanen. That makes them better. Than a full season of Jake Ottinger is better than what they had last year. So they are better. I think Nashville's better. Minnesota's basically what they were last year. St. Louis is basically what they were last year. So it's evened out, this division, right? So I think best case for any team is they can win it. And I think Dallas can win it. But again, what has to go right is Ben and Sagan have to resurge in some sense. They need a guy like Stankoven or somebody to come in and really add to this roster because they don't have the cap space to go out and add forwards. They need a Vezina type season from Jake Ottinger, and a Heiskanen needs to step up and replace John Klingberg offensively. So that's what they're going to need to do it. But I think it's outside for sure, an outside chance, a very minimal chance. But I think they do have the chance that they could win this division at the end of the year.
Okay, so let's say you take the 4 major awards, and it's pretty easy to go Robertson for Hart, Heiskanen for the Norris, Ottinger for the Vezina, DeBoer for the Jack Adams.
Yeah.
In a world where they win the division, which one of those is the most likely? Vezina, Norris, Hart, Jack Adams.
Probably. I think, like, I hate the voter side of things with the coaching stuff, but bouncing Colorado out of that top spot is going to play very well. So I would probably say Pete DeBoer for the Jack Adams. It is kind of gross as that is to put that one above it, just because of that's such a big thing to the Stanley Cup champs. They ran away with that division, and okay, you took it from them. But then I would say Jake Ottinger probably is the Vezina winner if you're going to win that division, because he's going to need to do that for them to get to that point. They're just, even if Ben and Sagan have resurgent years, like, you're not going to be the top scoring team in that division. So defensively and in net, you're going to have to be one of the better teams. So that's going to start with him. I'd probably say then Heiskanen would be the next option after that for the Norris, and the last one is Robertson for the Hart. Because, again, Hart's season for Robinson is 20, 30 more points than what he had last year. And I don't think that individually is enough for them to win the division. They need all these other things to happen on top of that to happen. So I think he'll have a great year. But, Robertson Hart year is what, 50 plus goals and 110 plus points. And probably significantly more points than anybody else on the team, which he has the capability to do so. But of all of them, if they win the division, I think it's the least likely.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think, I let me say it this way. you are 100% right to say it as a likely thing, right? Because I think there was a legitimate argument that Robertson should have been in the top 5 for the MVP last year.
Yep.
He was fucking incredible for that team.
Yep.
And, you know, man, like, I think you could very easily talk me into a situation where, like, Logan Stankoven finishes closer for the Calder than he does for the Hart if they finish in that top 1 or 2 spots in that division, just because, you know, that to me would make more sense as far as him being resurgent. But again, like, if a rookie comes in and swings big, like, then I think, you know, what you're looking at more than anything is that Jack Adams. Like, I definitely think you're right. I think the top 2 by a mile are the Jack Adams and the Vezina. I think the Jack Adams, I mean, I'm just repeating you at this point, but, like, I think you said it right, absolutely right, that, like, on a probability basis, DeBoer wins the Jack Adams. On a quality basis, Ottinger has to have a Vezina season.
Yeah.
You know, he has to have the Saros season. Other than that, I don't see how they crack that top 2. So, okay, well, all right, then let's do it this way. Eddy, what is your final, let me ask you this. What is your final prediction for the order of the Central Division? And I can go first if you prefer.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I will go Colorado, St. Louis, Nashville, Minnesota, Dallas, Winnipeg, Arizona, Chicago. So I will have Dallas just outside of the playoffs.
I am going to go... I'm taking Colorado off the top spot. I'm going to go St. Louis, Colorado, but it's going to be close. I'm going to go Nashville, Dallas, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Arizona, Chicago.
Yeah, no, I have a hard time, you know. Man, it's going to be a tire fire in that division. It's going to be either a ton of fun or it's going to be awful. All right, well, that does it for the Central Division.
Yeah. Who we got next? Are we doing Buffalo or are we going Rangers next?
We might do the Rangers next, and then jump Buffalo. Because, I mean, you know, we did the listener choice first for the West. We'll do it first for the East. And then, so I think it is fair to say that the next 3 episodes you guys can expect is going to be the last 2 divisions in the East. We have the Ducks-centric preview that we want to do, where that'll probably be an obnoxious episode.
Yeah, well, that is maybe the first episode in I don't know how many months.
5 years?
5 years, yeah, feels like it. That all 4 of us should be on that show, because Pat says,
that's the goal.
Pat says he's going to return for that show. He says, I have the screenshots. I think he put it out on Twitter, and he, like, on his own personal Twitter, and said that he was going to make a return, thinking about making a return. So he says he's going to be there for that one. So that should be an early October one. I imagine we're going to try and bang these 2 Eastern Conference ones out fairly quickly. And then aim for maybe early October, late September for the Ducks preview. So those are definitely, like you said, the next 3 shows that are guaranteed. Depending on how much time we have in between these next 2 East ones and the Ducks preview, we might try and throw out a regular show and talk about some of the rookie camp going on right now and any other news that comes out. But we'll see kind of timing-wise how that works out.
Yeah, we got somebody that we wanted to talk to earlier in the summer that I think has been going to rookie camp and seeing some of this stuff, so we'll try to get them on. And then there are a couple other dumb ideas that I haven't quite upped Eddy on yet that I want to try to get out at the very least in the first week or 2 of the season that I think should be fun and silly. So hopefully we will have a good chunk of episodes over the next 4 or 5 weeks for you guys to just kind of enjoy. And beyond that, thank you everybody for giving us your time.
Yeah, enjoy the game tonight. I know you're all listening to this tomorrow, but I guess hope you enjoyed the game tonight.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it just started, right? Or it's starting in 7 minutes from now.
Yeah, in a couple minutes, yeah. I saw that they tweeted out that they're getting ready for it to pop, so.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out, guys, and we will see you shortly with the Metro with the Rangers and Atlantic with the Sabres. Take care, guys.
Bye, everybody.